that. This is great. But that's a picture. That's a month or two in a year, or 3 months. We have to evolve from that to a program, to a year, or a season. And that's when the challenges come, because we can learn to do that, and this is like doing any stalker program. We can do the stalker program almost anywhere, and you do a better job than most of us. The stalkers are easy to deal with, but when it comes to the finishing end, when we want that fleshness, that roundness around the animal, is when the things are a little more challenging. And all this planning needs to be a little more developed. So this is a beautiful picture in the spring, but what happens if this is the last month of summer? We're heading to a crisis here, because we have many of these animals nearly ready, or they're heavy feeders or heavy stalkers, and we're facing fall. What do we do then? We rush to sell them, and they're not finished yet. Do we put them in a feed yard and feed them hay? Do we keep them through fall, trying to gain weight? So that's the challenge. How and when we want these guys. We need this picture, but as early in the season as possible, so that we have the time when that finishing window happens to us, that we have the time to reach that target weight and fleshing or finishing on the animal. So it is important to know that we're capable of doing this, but it's more important to know when. The benchmarks, when we do this, when we need it.
If you did it right, what would be the time lapse between the top left picture and the bottom right? Or would be
here? Yeah. Well, let's say that we are having here, maybe we're 300 pounds or so from theirs. So it's good. In that take it would take a month and a half, 2 months. Depends on the gain. We're going to go through the gains, but if you're making 2 pounds a day, maybe you need or 3 pounds a day, maybe a month away or 2 months away. See, it all depends on how they weigh and what the target weights are. These guys, for example, this were on average this group was sold at around 2 years of age. This one in particular had 18 months of age at slaughter. It's very hard to be below 2 months of age, 2 years of age. It's very hard to be below with steers. And these were 1,100 pounds. They weren't 1,400 pounds. Like in your case, you have heavier animals, heavier frame, you may have to go through another half a year or speed everything faster at the beginning to get to the 2-year-old fat steer at slaughter. So.
Stay away from steers.
Yes. Well, I was going to go back to that. We are new in this business. Heifers or some lighter animals that finish slightly better, or faster, earlier, would be more flexible. So heifers would be a way to go. Many of us are thinking now that twice, because heifers have a very good price in the market. At home, we used to, most of the country killed the heifers for 5 years or 6 years, during 5 or 6 years, when cattle prices were a third of what they are today. Our present prices at home are the same as yours here. They used to be about a third. 5 years ago, 6 years ago. That was good for some of us that kept the animals. For the ones that sold and sold the heifers and sold everything for meat, now they cannot go back to this business. So there is a very, very important heifer market now building. So you think twice that you're going to kill the heifer. But again, yes, going to the question, yes, if you want to start and you want to build your confidence, you'd be better off doing this with spayed heifers, and then progress into the steer program that needs maybe 200 pounds or 300 pounds more than a heifer. So this is what Alan was referring to about the fleshness, developing or feeling this back quarter back here, having enough round, the bottom of the round here should drop down and have a really well developed back quarter with this fat deposits of globules here. Those are indicators of finishing. Again, it won't look as a feedlot steer, but they look pretty finished to me. Maybe your market, your target is different, and maybe you need a little more fat. But getting more than this in our programs is difficult. It might mean 6 months more on the place. Here, for example, if I was in this picture in late summer, I know that I won't get here, or early fall. I know I won't get to this finishing in 2 or 3 months in my part of the world. So what I do, I go through, I just plan for finishing in winter time in my part of the world. I say, well, I'm going to finish in winter. I forget the fall. I would slow down the pace a bit here, don't worry too much, but then I finish them in 6 months I get them finished over the 6 months instead of it rushing in 2 month or 2 or 3 month period. You see what I'm saying here? I know that they're going to be finished at, let's say, 2.5 months of age. But from that study, I know that if I do the things right, tenderness is not going to be that different, and I may have a more homogeneous and consistent product.
You're going to finish them on winter annuals.
Yes, most likely. Yes. And then this comes back to a story that we have to, well, we have a few more pictures here, but these are grazing alfalfa pastures, and we're going to go back to it. Alfalfa is the evil of all grasses, all forages, the evil of all evils. But that's what we have at home because we're too dry to have better grasses. I wish we had the right grass, white clover pastures that some other parts of the world have. Where we are at, we're in a 28-inch, 30-inch rainfall area, and we're lucky that we have sandy soils, so alfalfas do pretty good. So it's a very common and simple forage to deal with, although we have the bloat issue all the time, and we will talk about that. But this is when we talk about alfalfa pastures, this is what they look like. We're not talking about 20% alfalfa and then bloating on the animals on a patch of alfalfa when you're trying to graze the grass all around it. The key thing I think for bloat is that you graze the alfalfa. You're just not grazing the grasses and trying to avoid the alfalfa. Many times we have legumes in these pastures and we graze the pasture suffering the legume. Am I making any sense? We graze the grass, we graze the mixture, and we know that legume is there, is going to create bloat. But we have to graze the grass. And every now and then we have this little patch there that bloats an animal. Here we're talking about grazing the legume. I mean, we're managing for the legume, the grass is, and you get used to it and you manage. These fields have 80%, 85% grass, legume, 20% grass, fescue, or nothing. And we lost, this last 5-6 years to the drought, we lost all the grasses. See, they're not that deep-rooted, so we lost them. So these are pure stands of alfalfa. And is that the perfect world? It's not. But we lost the grasses. We're trying to grow back into these grasses, like the orchard grass, the fescues, some of the perennial ryegrass, but not much of a success yet. So this is what we're talking about, grazing alfalfa. The gains on this thing they're not perfect. They're, you're lucky if you get to 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds in spring, but they're okay for the rate of finishing that we need or fattening that we need, the rate of gain, and we have this frame 3, frame 4 type of animals. That's where everything matches. We have a good match of energy or quality forage and animal size. If we had the larger animals, then we have to go into maybe a program that we have to add in there summer grasses, summer annuals like sorghum or the green leaf corn for grazing to boost the gains in summer for those animals that are close or closer to finishing, and they don't finish because they're too big, or the frame score is too big, is too large. Yes, sir.
On a finished animal, would the body condition score be 6 or 7?
Body conditions is always this. Oh, body condition score. Yes, we don't body condition the slaughter animals, the steers. Body conditioning is more for the cows and heifers.
Right.
But again, if you have to translate the body condition, yeah, it's going to be an 8.
An 8?
Yes,
Those steers that we looked at before, that was
they would be like an 8. If they were heifers, they would be more like 8s. But again, body condition is not something that we use for steers or heifers that are grown for meat. We do body conditioning for replacing the heifers or cows.
Question. When you're doing this legume grass mixture, doesn't the cows prefer one or the other and eat more of one than the other?
Oh yeah. When you have the grass, the question is if when we have the grass legume mixtures, do they prefer one to the other? They go for the grass if the grass is leafy. The grass grows off of really from the crown, and we don't have this stemmy grass. So they go for the grass first, and then they go right away to the alfalfa, to the legume. But they really prefer the grass if they have a leafy grass, like orchard grass when it's short. The perennial ryegrass is a good example. In these places, in these fields, however, we had fescue, mostly fescue as a grass, and fescue is not that palatable, so you have to keep it down, really down, and leafy to make it palatable, and have them go for the grass. Otherwise, they go for the mixture, and sometimes they just stay on the first top part of the alfalfa pasture. So having the grass in the mixture helps with bloat. I would say it's a very it isn't a strategy, but it's not the strategy that will prevent bloat from happening.
Do you find much difference between white clover and alfalfa in terms of its food value?
Food value? White clover is better, is less stemmy, has a higher proportion of leaves to stem, so the leaf to stem ratio is higher. It has less lignin, lignifies less than alfalfa. For the same reason, it tolerates the summer heat, summer temperatures less than alfalfa, and more so if the moisture drops. So it's not that white clover would not be tolerant to summer slumps as alfalfa is. White clover gives us the opportunity of more frequent grazings. Alfalfa needs a rest period that are slightly longer, and so we need to be a high intense, low frequency program on alfalfa compared to white clover. White clover, however, is going to be as bloating as alfalfa is if you are into a time of the year and situation where something else happens though. When you can plant white clover and be successful with it, most likely there you can also have perennial ryegrass or some of these nice grasses with it, and most likely also the soils are better than the soils you will use this alfalfa on, so the mixture is going to be a little more grassy. You have more grass to legume, and everything is going to be more palatable or similar. So again, the animals will go for the grass too. So that's why some cases you see less bloat on white clover ryegrass mixture than on alfalfa pastures, because we're talking about different environments. Another thing we've learned in these mixtures or these pastures is that we can have here 8, 10 varieties, 10 species of grasses and legumes. At the end of the day, we end up with 2 or 3 that are the productive ones, that are the ones that really you rely on. So My suggestion is, at least in most of our cases, we don't need to plant 6, 7, 8 species, make a very expensive planting to end up with 2 or 3, and sometimes with 1, like we do. And I say this because I see many of you and many places that, the planting these pastures is so costly, seed-wise, all the whole strategy, because seeds are different sizes and they need different tillage practices and that. So we don't need to get too complicated with this. So what I guess I'm trying to say also, we don't need to be creating what will be a native range type of situation where in the native range you have several species, cool season, warm season. We're not really developing that. We're not that smart. Nature did that. We're not that smart. We can plant 1 or 2 or 3 species. That's all we do. And so we're not going to create a native range ourselves. You see, no, it's not going to be native, but I'm trying to say that we're not going to mimic nature and create something that is going to be 3 times or 4 times more productive. We're giving diversity for productivity. And this field, we could have had native range, and this field would produce about 1/5 of what this alfalfa pasture is producing. Of course, that native range would have been more stable, more flexible, more sustainable, if you want, or more resilient. However, my ancestors, or we've chosen to replace that for productivity. I'm not making any sense here. I went a little bit off the track here, but I want to make that point because sometimes we think that we're trying to develop a pasture that's going to look like a highly productive native range, and that's not going to happen. If we want to have the diversity of a range, of a native range, then let's the native range take that land back, if it can. In many parts of the world, there's no chances of recuperating the fields to native ranges anymore, because we have disturbed them for so many years that there's no chance of getting them back. Anyway, this is the story of this. Pictures, I just wanted to show you pictures of stalkers grazing and finished animals, what they look like, or in my eye, what we're targeting for. We're really looking at this bulky, massy animal, massy. It has to have, we really look at the back, the roundness, the thickness, flatness in the back. But we don't want something, with globules of fat, but that's not going to happen. We have a little bit of fatness in the back here, and that's about as much as we need. These guys were all between 3 and 4% intramuscular fat. They're not about that.
How old are they?
These were all about 2 years old, maybe 24, 26 months. The last group, this was a commercial farm, so we started to sell these guys when they were 18 months old, all the way to 24. So we're talking of a group here that was more than about 600 of them. There's always some that get finished faster and easier and earlier, and some take a little longer. So all this group was sold in a 5-month range period.
I get confused between a harvesting date and a harvesting weight.
Harvesting?
Harvesting date, how old should the animal be versus how much it should weigh,
Okay.
and how it affects tenderness, flavor.
Okay. The harvesting date or harvesting target, age-wise or date-wise, is to me between 18 months of age to about 24, 26 months of age. And we're talking there 6-month harvesting window, age-wise or date-wise. What is going to be consistent across all those ages is the finishing or this fatness around them. So in your case, in our case, the buyers are looking at the age a little bit first, but they really want to have an eye on the finishing more than anything. the back fat, the finishing, this condition. So if he is 18 months old and he's already like this, he's ready to go. But this guy here could be 24 months old and he's ready to go now, not before, not when he was 18. Because genetics are not, they're homogeneous, but there's always differences between animals. So these two guys may be 4 months old or 3 months old different.
So you're gonna look at the condition of the animal.
More than anything. And within an age, of course, an age frame, they say, well, I don't want animals that are 3 years old, but I don't want them to be maybe 18 months old. Well, you could be within that window. In your case, you may say, well, I want to sell everything before 2 years and a half, when they are 2.5 years old, because that's too long, and money-wise, expense-wise, it's costly, and the market. But you're going to be battling with that within that age frame. It's not going to be a target age. More than anything, there's going to be a target finishing. Now, when we go to weights, in my part of the world, the weights are around 1,100, 1,200, up to 1,400 pounds. More than anything, everything is going to, most of the time we're going to be around the 1,100 pounds at slaughter. But if they're not fleshed yet, if they don't have enough finishing, have to wait longer.
What weight are they going in?
Excuse me, sir?
I'm just thinking, this is assumed to be like a feed, we'd have a feed yard situation here. What weight are they, these were all one-time stocker calves?
Yes,
right?
yes.
So what weight are they going into that alfalfa pasture?
Oh, they've been on this program from right after weaning. So they go into a cycle of alfalfa pasture, winter annual, summer annual. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. If you have the opportunity, sometimes you have like a native range or other pastures to put them to do this backgrounding, what they grow them, but that during that growing period, you're also thinking about the finishing. You're not just forgetting, you don't forget about the finishing ever, because the growing is also targeting for some fat deposition. See, fat deposition is always, we're right on time. The fat deposition happens, very slow at the beginning, and then you end up laying more fat at the end when the animal's close to getting close to the adult size. But it's not a discrete process. It's a continuous process. So if you feed them well at the beginning, you are laying fat anyway when the animal's young. And you think about the kids. Our kids, some are a little fatter than others early on, and that's what we're doing here. We're trying to get them to grow and lay a little bit of fat all the way, if you have the chance. And if you have the chance, they're ready when they're ready. Like I was saying, they could be 18 months old, 19 months old, that they could be ready if they reached your target weight, or they could be 24 months old and they're ready. So again, this concept of growing and finishing, I think you have to evolve from separate compartments to a more continuing phase, or combined compartments. There is a growing stalker program, but at the same time you're thinking when and how you're going to finish them. If you don't have a excellent finishing potential there because your pastures are not terribly good, and you still want to do grass fed, you may have to put a little more emphasis during the stalker program after weaning to gain weight there if you want them finished later on. So we're going to go back to that, but it's 12.